If you're a product leader, take a look at your bookshelf. I bet it's packed with stuff from McKinsey, business journals, market reports, you know the drill. But what if the most powerful tool for your next big thing isn't on that shelf at all? What if it's actually over in the science fiction section? Today, we're going to talk about why sci-fi isn't just entertainment. It's a serious, strategic playbook for actually creating the future.
So let me just ask you this, straight up. Are you still building faster horses? It's such a classic trap, right? We listen to our customers, we crunch the data, and we make these tiny incremental improvements to what's already there. But real, game-changing innovation, the kind that carves out whole new categories, that doesn't come from polishing the past. It comes from having the guts to imagine a completely different future. And if you don't believe me, just look at this. Back in 1980, McKinsey, we're talking one of the top consulting firms on the planet, told AT&T that by the year 2000, mobile phones would be this tiny little niche market. Their big forecast? 900,000 users. So what actually happened? Over 100 million. I mean, they weren't just a little bit off. They missed the mark by over 100 times.
Now the problem here, the real problem, wasn't a faulty spreadsheet or bad math. It was a complete and total failure of imagination. They just couldn't see how this new technology would fundamentally change human behavior, how we connect, how we live. They were trapped, just optimizing for the world as it was, not the world that was about to be.
And this really highlights this huge difference in thinking. You see, business analysts are trained to live in what we could call the space of probabilities. They look backwards at all the data, and they extrapolate what's likely to happen next. It's safe, it makes sense, but it's totally boxed in by the past. Science fiction authors, though, they play in the space of possibilities. They couldn't care less about today's data. They just ask, what if? And they go explore what could be.
That's exactly why we need to change how we see science fiction. It's not just escapism. Think of it as a strategic laboratory. It's this super low-cost, high-impact way to run thought experiments about the future. You can explore not just some new gadget, but how that gadget changes society, how it creates brand new markets, and all the unintended consequences that ripple out. And you can do all that before you write a single line of code.
But here's the kicker. The real power of science fiction isn't just its spooky ability to predict some future tech. The truth is actually way, way bigger than that. It's not a passive thing at all. It creates the future. It does this by painting a vision of what's possible that's so compelling, so exciting, that it literally inspires generations of engineers and designers and entrepreneurs to go out and build it. It plants an idea in our collective imagination, a desire for a future that doesn't exist yet, but suddenly feels totally essential.
And look, this isn't some fuzzy theory. The evidence is absolutely everywhere. William Gibson's Neuromancer gave us cyberspace and giant tech corporations long before anyone had heard of Google or Meta. Years before the iPad, Orson Scott Card was describing personal tablets in Ender's Game. Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash? That was basically the blueprint for the metaverse. The line from fiction to reality is direct. It's undeniable. This mindset is being used right now by the most ambitious innovators out there. Take Elon Musk. He has said point blank that Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, this epic story about saving civilization across the galaxy, was fundamental to why he created SpaceX. He's not just building better rockets, he's literally trying to build the future he read about in a sci-fi book as a kid. Or what about Amazon? That vision for Alexa, the little computer that's in millions of homes, that didn't come out of a focus group. Jeff Bezos has said it came straight from the talking computer on the Starship Enterprise in Star Trek. That was the goal. He wanted to build that computer, and that sci-fi vision guided the whole project.
And it's not just cool gadgets. Even the deep-down infrastructure of our digital world was inspired by these stories. Google co-founder Larry Page also pointed to the Star Trek computer as the ideal for what a search engine should be, this all-knowing, conversational source of information. The pattern here is crystal clear. Visionary leaders use science fiction as their North Star. Okay, so you see the power, you see the examples. The big question is, how do you actually do this? How do you move from just being a fan of sci-fi to actually thinking like a sci-fi author and making it a real part of your product strategy? Well, the key practice is something called world building. And no, this isn't just for D&D campaigns or fantasy novels. It's a serious, rigorous, intellectual discipline. When you build a world, you don't just invent one piece of tech. You have to think through all the consequences. How does it change the economy? What new laws do we need? How does this technology make people feel? Excited? Scared? Lonely? It forces you to think way, way beyond a simple feature list.
You can actually boil this down to a simple 3-step method.
First, you identify a trend that's happening right now. Could be tech, could be social. Second, you extrapolate. And I mean really extrapolate. Don't just ask what happens next year. Ask, what if this trend just goes into hyperdrive for the next 20 years? And third, you explore the consequences. You map out all the ripples. What new industries pop up? What jobs disappear? What are the weird new social rules that emerge? That's where the gold is.
And this really gets to a core shift in your whole job description. It's something Steve Jobs understood perfectly. He famously said, "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." Your job as a true innovator isn't to be a pollster, just asking people if they want a slightly faster horse. Your job is to be a visionary, to show them a future that's so compelling they didn't even know it was possible, and now they can't live without it.
There's this incredible quote that just nails the whole idea of true leadership. You don't get a team excited by handing them a boring project plan and telling them to go collect wood. You inspire them by painting a picture of a destination, by making them yearn for the vast and endless sea. Science fiction is the tool that lets you paint that picture. It creates the desire that makes all the hard work of building feel not just worthwhile, but inevitable.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. A lot of the tech leaders building our world today were inspired by science fiction, which is great. But sometimes it seems like they might have mistaken the dystopias for instruction manuals. These stories are so often warnings, not roadmaps. The key is to read them critically, to ask not just what can we build, but what should we build? Because the future isn't a thing that just happens to us. It's something we all create, one product, one decision at a time. So the real question is, what future will you build?